Te reo ererangi o te mānia. This episode was produced in Otatahi by Plains Media, with support from New Zealand On Air.
Excited today to have the lovely Joy Reid with me from One Mother to Another, which is a gorgeous initiative supporting parents in NICU unit across the country.
Across the South Island, yeah.
Thanks for joining us for Being Real Parents with me, Anna, and my colleague and buddy,
Kate. We work in the parenting space.
And it's here where we'll talk about our worlds as parents, the good, the not so good, and the hilarious, and mix this with what we know about behaviour and psychology. Hi, Joy.
Kia ora.
So lovely to have you with us, and your little daughter too.
Yes, I have. I've brought my 4-year-old Annabelle in today, but she's hopefully going to be quietly sitting in the corner.
And I don't mind if she's not. So tell us about you. That's probably where we need to start, hey?
So me as a human?
As a human, and how One Mother to Another came to be. What is it? How it came to be?
Perfect. So I'm Joy. I'm a mother of 3 children, a 12-year-old, a 9-year-old, and my 4-year-old. And that essentially feeds directly into One Mother to Another, which is a charity that I co-founded 9.5 years ago. And so what we do... bear with me. What we do is... Sorry about that. That was Bluey. Had to get Bluey back on track.
Of course we did.
Yeah.
Priorities.
We are a charity that supports parents who are in hospital with their sick kids and mothers who are in mental health crisis. So this came about after a girlfriend and I had both had journeys in the hospital system with our kids, and we just felt really vulnerable and isolated in that space. And so we kind of thought what would have helped us in that and have kind of moved forward from there. So One Mother to Another now we... give away about on track this year to give away about 8,000 care packages to parents who are in hospital in about 24 different South Island hospital wards. We have a real focus on parents who are in that neonatal space, the NICU and the special care baby units. That's been my story with 2 of my children, and I just know how difficult it is when you're separated from your newborn at birth, basically. And so we just kind of come alongside and encourage a parent in that space, give them a care package full of some really practical items, but also some items that'll help with their mental well-being. And just to show that we care, we put a handwritten note of care in every single care package. Just, you can be in a room full of people, you know, there'll be tubes and babies and machines and nurses around, but you can feel so alone in that space. And so we just want to come alongside a parent in that moment of vulnerability and say, hey, look, we've been there. We see you. You've got this. And we've expanded after that sort of focus on the neonatal units. We've also expanded into the paediatric wards, especially in Christchurch, and also further afield around the South Island. And again, this is a space and a ward that I have personal experience in. Again, 2 of my kids have had quite serious stints in the paediatric hospital system. And then we've also got a real passion to help mothers in mental health crisis, because again, that is just such a place of isolation. And so our care packages are tailored for those hospital wards. We do go through the hospital system, so we support parents who are in the inpatients wards, and also parents who are in the outpatients mental health ward. So they're obviously receiving hospital care, but they're allowed to be at home in the community. And then we partner with a couple of community organisations as well. So yeah, essentially our heart is just to come alongside a parent. You know, they're not the ones that are sick, but they carry such a load when your child is sick, and the ripple effects can, you know, if we can support a mama or a father or a grandparent or whatever in that moment of vulnerability, then our hope is that it kind of ripples into the care and love that they can give their child as that child recovers.
I want to say here, if this is something that's, you know, pulling at you, and realise the importance of this work, you can donate to One Mother to Another by heading to their website and doing that there. Yeah.
Thank you, that's kind.
Well, yeah, for me as well, because I was just listening to you, and I was really moved by what you're saying and what you're doing, actually, too. Yeah.
Thank you. It's very personal, kaupapa.
Yeah. I hear that. Yeah, cool. What was the moment that sparked this for you? Because it's a unique approach.
Yeah. So actually, it was my girlfriend who came up with the idea first. She had been in hospital with her sick child with suspected meningitis, and it was her that went the next day or a couple of days later and provided the first care packages. And she told me about it that night, and I thought, oh my goodness. Bluey's obviously very funny.
Very funny, yeah.
And she told me what she'd done, and this resonated because I'd had that experience in neonatal unit, and instantly we decided we should make it a thing. Yeah. So that was back in 2016, and the rest is history.
So she just did that off the back of coming away from hospital and realised that would have been really helpful for her.
Yeah, well, they give you, back in the day in Christchurch, they used to give the children a little care package, which would just have some bubbles and a sticker or something in it. And, Christina thought at that moment, look, this is really hard for me too. Like, it's really hard for a parent to watch a child have a lumbar puncture. It's not an easy space to be in. And she thought, hey, I would have liked something. So she just made up these care packages off her own bat, made 10 of them and dropped them into the ward and said, look, if you see another parent who's feeling a bit distressed, give these out. And when she said what she'd done, I thought, oh my gosh, what a brilliant idea. So all the credit for the idea definitely goes to Christina. But it's been, a joint effort, initially to get it off the ground.
You're listening to Being Real Parents on Plains Media, broadcasting on 96.9 FM, streaming live and available as a podcast on plains.org.nz.
What do you remember about your own experience of being in NICU?
Well, I've had two experiences now, and that first one was really defining. So my first child was born at 39 weeks, and I thought it would be like a healthy, normal birth. The birth was really traumatic, and he wasn't breathing at birth for 3.5 minutes and was whisked immediately away for extra care. And I just remember feeling so powerless. I remember feeling like a mama bear who'd had her bear cub taken off me. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen the movies where you see the giant grizzly bear going crazy. That is what I felt. And I just felt so alone and vulnerable and out of control. Yeah. And I just remember that feeling of helplessness and feeling like you should have it all together. And this is not what I expected. And I just remember feeling like I was out of control. And, we've got a really happy ending for our story. My son is a, 12-year-old go-getter and, we've never had any repercussions after that neonatal experience. But that first week of motherhood, it sent me into a journey of postnatal depression. And I went through quite a long grief journey as well in the months and years afterwards. And so I just remember feeling like it was so unfair and having no idea what was happening and no control. So that's probably the defining feeling from that experience.
I mean, so confusing, hey, so confronting. And so is that the moment? Is that when you went... if anybody else feels like that, I need them to know that that's how it feels and is kind of normal under the circumstances?
I think that's probably the motivation, but it's certainly not the moment. In that moment, I had no capacity to think outside of my own grief. Yeah. But it wasn't until Christina had her experience with her child, and that was 2.5 years later. And by that stage, there'd been a level of healing that had gone on with that. I'd had a second child and managed to hold that child at birth, which was a very cathartic healing experience. So I was a bit further on. And so when Christina had the idea, I thought, actually, I remember how awful that was. I'm now at a place that I feel like I could give back. And I just didn't want anyone else to feel like that. And the irony, I guess, is that with our third child, who was born, 7 years after my first neonatal experience, we were back in neonates unexpectedly. And it was actually easier second time round because it was more familiar. But it was still a really difficult scenario that even though you are prepared, it's still quite confronting. And it was in that moment I actually saw our care packages given out.
Oh, wow.
I got to be a fly on the wall and watch the care packages given out. And I always remember vividly seeing this woman who had suffered a loss, and one of her twins had survived and one of them unfortunately hadn't, in a very preterm birthing scenario, and just the grief she was going through. And she was alone. It was in COVID times. You couldn't have visitors. It was just a complex, horrific situation. And, you know, like, our gift bag seems like such a tiny thing when someone's going through such a big grief journey. And I just thought, oh gosh, you know, I hope we're not even... I just didn't think it could make a difference in such a huge trauma. And I saw the reaction that she gave, and just the tears and the heart and the comfort that it provided her in that moment. And I just thought, man, we can never stop doing this. Like, this has to be the motivation for us to expand our kaupapa to so many others that need it. And, you know, that woman's journey, I don't even know who she is, but it has been such a huge catalyst for our expansion and our growth and our reason, our why.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, how do you hope those mums feel when they receive those care packages, but you've just described that.
We hope they feel seen. They just don't feel alone.
Yeah.
And just, if it can distract them for 30 seconds, that's 30 seconds less that they're in their head, worrying, fear. You know, you can feel so sick with the worry and the fear, right? So if we can, for 30 seconds, take care of them while they're not having to take care of the world, then I feel like job done. If it's more than 30 seconds, it's a bonus. But we have such an amazing team of volunteers that have, in a community that has evolved over the years. And a lot of that community are former PAC recipients, and their stories are just so powerful. And I keep thinking, well, it must be making some kind of difference, because otherwise people wouldn't be wanting to join the community. And then their stories are just so moving. So I think the power of a gift bag is far... And the power of care in a moment of vulnerability from someone who has sat in that chair, I feel like it's far more impactful than we've ever possibly imagined.
Because the care packers are beautiful. I've seen these, you know, through your social. And, you know, so they've been gifted items, but new gifted, gorgeous items that were, you know, are useful, beautiful, we'd all love. And then there's that letter, hey?
Yeah, we have like a sort of a three-pronged approach to the care packages, which has evolved. Obviously, practical items. Because a lot of parents, you know, especially in the paediatric space, you've turned up to hospital and you have nothing. No toothbrush, toothpaste, shampoo, conditioner, you know. And again, this is my own experience. I turned up there with my 18-month-old with pneumonia and couldn't wash my hair for a week.
Yeah.
Which I know sounds tiny, but it's just giving a little bit of humanity back to that parent, right? Giving them some stuff that will make their life a bit easier. Earplugs, food, snacks, reading material. We also have designed our own bespoke gratitude journal and notepad, because the science says you cannot be both anxious and grateful in exactly the same moment. It is physically impossible for your brain to do that. And so again, if we can help guide a parent into 30 seconds of focusing on what they might be grateful for, or something that's slightly different from the fear that they're currently engulfed in, then that is, you know, something that we can help offer. And also just a notepad, because I remember with my kids, the doctors do the rounds, and you see them once every 24 hours, and you have all these questions you want to ask them in the middle of the night, and they walk in the door and you cannot remember them. And I used to write them on little bits of serviette and things like that. And, you know, so just kind of encouraging parents to take an active role in the conversations around their child's care as well. But the most important item in our care package by far is our handwritten note. And we have, I'd say, an army of volunteers around the country who are writing between 500 and 700 notes a month.
Wow.
That go in these care packages, and they say, essentially, you've got this, we see you, we know that it can be really tough where you are right now, and you can do it. Kia haha, kia kaha, kia mai, kia manawanui, you know, be strong, be steadfast, be brave. And that, we find, is what conveys that message and heart of care more than anything else in the care package. Even though it's nice to have a brownie and brush your teeth, it's that note that seems to be able to convey something far greater than just a care pack.
There's something really connecting about it, isn't there? Like connecting in that moment and then connecting for people to want to remain involved.
That's certainly our heart, I guess. And, someone once said to me after my neonatal experience, the first one, she said, after you've been in NICU, you kind of join a club. It's like a NICU club, a club that nobody wants to be in. But it's like you all have a shared experience that binds you. And you're all slightly traumatised by the beeps and, the random things that, it's just so hot in those NICU rooms. Like there's just sort of certain triggers and it's sort of an experience that you can only really share with someone else that's been in there. And I thought that was really true. It's a club none of us want to be in, but we are. And it's also a club that for a lot of people, and myself included, that you almost can't ever forget. And nobody will talk about it once I've got a healthy 4-year-old sitting next to me now, and nobody ever talks really about what it was like in those first days that she was born, but it's an experience that still has been a defining scar on my life, and it is a scar, and it will always be a scar. And for a lot of people, it is. We sometimes I do talks and I'll speak to a woman who said, look, I've got a healthy 24-year-old, but I had this experience 24 years ago and I've never forgotten, and they will well up and cry. So it's I don't know how grief works necessarily with the science, but it's an experience that you might try to forget, but it just never truly goes away.
No. My understanding is adapting with that grief. Yeah. Yeah. I'm lost for words because I'm so moved actually by what you're doing and the experiences that you're sharing, and how brave that is. Yeah.
Thank you. I would also add that it's been a really healing experience for me. So while I'll graciously accept the compliment of being brave, I'm working on accepting compliments. This is the journey I'm on. But I would say it's actually helped me more than I feel like I have helped others. It's given me a chapter 2 to my experiences that did threaten to derail me completely. It's given me understanding that my pain now had a purpose, that it wasn't for nothing. And I think that's helped me reconcile a little bit about the journeys that I've had with my kids in hospital. And by far, my journeys are not as severe or as crazy as a lot of other people, but I will say that I, just going on a tangent here, I went on a deep dive the other day into Google Scholar and found a report that said it doesn't actually matter how sick your child is in hospital. The experience of being in hospital, the psychological trauma that is felt by a parent is the same. Whether or not your child has had a cancer diagnosis, has broken their leg, is having a respiratory asthma attack, it doesn't matter whether you're in there for 2 days or you're in there for 2 weeks or this is the beginning of a really difficult journey. The fact that you've been in there, the psychological trauma is, the extent of it is the same on the parent. And I thought that was quite profound, because I feel like as parents we often minimise and be like, oh, well, I got to come home after 10 days in my NICU, or, some other people were there for 100 days, and that's awful. Your heart breaks for people that have worse experience, but, I feel like it's important not to belittle the own experience that you have had, because it is quite defining. And for me, it really changed quite a lot of my life choices and those sorts of things, that, postnatal depression journey, and also how big our family was and those sorts of things, and when we decided to have children. But I look back at it now and I think I look at One Mother to Another and I look at the beauty of the community that has come out of it, and I just feel like I am the lucky one that have got to cross paths with so many incredible people. And what a privilege it is to help others now in that space, and to know that my pain actually had a purpose. I think awkwardly, I'd choose to go through it again to be where we are today, which is not what I would have said 12 years ago. In fact, almost 12 years ago to the day.
That's an extraordinary statement, but yeah.
After lots of counselling.
Yeah. After lots of, that's right. That's right. And that's amazing. I'm interested, have you ever had moments of doubt in this work with one mother to another?
All the time. All the time. So in terms of, sometimes I look at it and I think, it's such a big beast now, or big in my definition of beast, 8,000 care packages a year. And I sometimes think, are we using the right, it takes a lot of resources, what I'm trying to suggest, to do that. And there are so many needs out there, right? Kids are going to school hungry and families are really struggling with the cost of living crisis. And there's so many causes out there that are so worthwhile. And sometimes I think, why on earth are we doing what we're doing? And I keep coming back to the fact that actually we all have a lane, and this is our lane that we're in. And the stories that we get about the difference that our care packages have made in that moment is what fuels us to keep going. So as I say, yes, we have doubts all the time, and we're constantly checking to make sure that what we're doing is fit for purpose. But we just get this resounding feedback that yes, it's really helped in that moment. Someone said it made them feel human again. Other people say it was the first time they felt like they'd been seen in weeks. In fact, we just had a volunteer come on just recently, and she'd started writing the notes, and she'd had an experience with her kid in hospital, I think probably about 10 years ago. And she said that she never thought that it had had any impact on her. She just thought, my kid went to hospital, and a week later we came out and the rest is history type scenario. They've never looked back. But she said she was writing these notes and the words say, we've sat in that chair and we know how difficult it can be. And she was like, suddenly it was like this grief that had been bottled up for years started to kind of come out, and I realised that it wasn't a nothing experience, that there wasn't some grief that I'd never dealt with in that space. And I think, gosh, okay, you just never know the ripple effect of what we do, where it's going to meet someone in their journey, and whether or not it's going to meet them in the hospital ward when they're receiving our care package, whether it's going to meet them as a volunteer when they're coming in, whether it's going to be part of their healing journey, whether it's going to give their pain some purpose. And so whenever I have moments where I think, oh man, should we be doing this? Should we be hustling? It's a lot of, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of resource. I just look at the stories that come through. Every half day we get another beautiful piece of feedback just saying, not necessarily thank you for the care package, but what it meant to them in that moment and how we can cross barriers in that space that the hospital system can't. The hospital is looking after the child. That is their job. And they do a great job of it. But recognising the holistic view that whānau are such an important part of that child's recovery, and the trauma that can be experienced in the hospital system can last so much longer. In fact, another deep dive study I read recently suggested that the psychological trauma faced in hospital can be just as high a month later after you get back out of hospital, because the parents just... The grief and the trauma experience in hospital can last so much longer after you come home. It doesn't just end the second your child is discharged from hospital. It just has this lasting psychological impact, and that can be in terms of depression or anxiety or fear or what that looks like. But just recognising that is a thing gives parents permission and validation to feel, and I think that can be really important.
Yeah. Gosh, that's interesting, isn't it, that the packages are helping, they helped you and helped that other mama that you were talking about to process in terms of, almost, it's a therapeutic work.
And I think just uniting community always is. And I think that's been probably our happy accident. Christina and I started out wanting to help the mums that were in hospital, and out of it has become this beautiful community. And that community can help support each other as well. Some of our amazing volunteers are grandmas, and so they've seen their grandchildren receive care packages, or they would have liked to have received a care package when they had their kids. And so it's just, there's this shared experience and this shared empathy, which I think is a driving force, which has been really beautiful. But as I say, it's healing not just for myself and for my staff, but it's also part of other people's healing journeys as they recover and, come back out of that cloud and that grief and come back into the world. And often we find out volunteers that come back to volunteer having received a care package, it's many, many years later It's, it can be 4 or 5 years later when they've kind of taken a deep breath out of those newborn toddler years and thought, actually, I'm at a space now where I can acknowledge that this happened to me and I want to pay it forward.
Beautiful. Top tips, we thought, should be for those of us who have got friends or whānau who are currently in hospital with bubbers. Go.
First of all, text them.
Nice.
Tell them that you're thinking of them. Do not ask what you can do. That is the most annoying question, because that person is not going to have the headspace to think, actually, you could go do my washing for me at home. Just take the initiative and do it. Drop a meal at the hospital for them, or drop a meal on their doorstep. Take and do their washing, but do not ask them to think of the idea. Just take the initiative and do it. But I think the most important thing in that space is just to make sure you keep checking in. Don't expect them to reply, and make sure you give them permission not to reply. Say, hey, look, I don't expect a reply, but just to letting you know it's Monday and I just wanted to say hi and thinking of you. But I just want to really reiterate that the help that you offer to a parent in this space needs to be genuine, authentic, and not ask anything of them back, because they do not have the capacity to reply, to tell you what their favourite takeaways are, to do that stuff. But just being there with someone, walking that journey and acknowledging that it must be really hard is really powerful.
Love that.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us today.
We hope you've learned that while parenting is challenging sometimes, that's totally normal. It's been fun having you with us. Keep being amazing. Bye!